As you no doubt are aware, there is a Gallup poll taken every year to select the 10 most admired women in the world. This year, for the 11th consecutive time, the name at the top of that list is that of a lady whose friendship I treasure very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the most admired woman of our time, Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt.
Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, most commonly known as Eleanor Roosevelt, was many things. Most namely, first modern First Lady, most admired woman in the United States for 12 years, wife of FDR, and so much more. Yet, with all of her accomplishments, she's remembered most as President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's wife. Nobody remembers her work outside of First Lady. Her fight for freedom and justice and peace for all was one that lasted a lifetime, not just her years as First Lady. Most Americans do not even know that Eleanor Roosevelt served in the United Nations. Twice. Eleanor Roosevelt did many things to serve our country and the world, but her 2 years on the Commission of Human Rights were extraordinary, a high point in her life full of high points for peace and justice worldwide.
Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world.
Eleanor's interest in human rights was based on something smaller, simpler, her interest in people. My interest is not aroused by an abstract cause, but by the plight of a single person. Eleanor Roosevelt.
The building of human rights would be one of the foundation stones on which we would build in the world an atmosphere in which peace could grow.
Eleanor Roosevelt's work during her time in the United Nations has helped change the world. Eleanor Roosevelt was an advocate for peace. She brought positive change to the world after the destruction left by the Second World War, uniting Eastern and Western nations to a common cause, helping create the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document generally agreed to be the foundation of international human rights law. Eleanor continued to fight for peace and justice, initiating the creation of Americans for Democratic Action, a group which focused on domestic social reform, and helping convince Truman to recognize Israel as a country. Eleanor Roosevelt was a leader. After her husband's death, she was appointed the role as chair of the Commission of Human Rights, and within 2 years, the commission produced and passed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document that's goal was to never again allow atrocities like those of World War II to happen. The document instead created a basis to react and act when those atrocities occurred. Eleanor initiated the creation of Americans for Democratic Action, a group which focused on domestic social reform and resistance against Russia in the developing Cold War. During her time as chair, she also wrote many letters of importance to the president, including ones urging him to recognize Israel as a state. Eleanor believed in her fight for peace and saw the recognition of Israel as a step in that process, and acting upon her belief, used her connections to have her belief become reality. In 1946, Eleanor was elected head of the Commission of Human Rights, her first time serving in the UN. In 1961, she is reappointed in the UN and appointed as chair of the President's Committee on the Status of Women. Eleanor's role in the United Nations was to be chair of the Commission of Human Rights, a role not to be taken lightly. As chair, Eleanor had a lot of influence over the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In the late 1940s, a woman being head of a worldwide commission was not something to be taken lightly. Eleanor earned the respect of everyone on her commission and worked with them to create the declaration. Eleanor was elected head of the commission by her fellow delegates, all male. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights not only helped protect the rights of people around the world, but was also a stepping stone in reuniting the eastern and western blocks of the world after the war. This document is the foundation of worldwide human rights, starting with Article 1.
Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood.
The Declaration of Human Rights has been the starting point of human rights advancements around the world benefiting many people up to this day.
Article 2. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this Declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person.
Try to particularly have people study the Declaration so that they will really understand what were considered to be the most essential rights for all people to have throughout the world.
Eleanor's influence during her time in the United Nations was not limited to the Commission of Human Rights. Eleanor was close acquaintances with the president at the time, Harry Truman. They sent many letters to each other. Months before Israel was recognized by the United States, Eleanor and Harry exchanged letters on the subject. Eleanor urging him to recognize Israel. She threatened her resignation from the UN if Truman did not meet her wishes. On May 14, 1948, Truman did just that, officially recognizing Israel as a state. America's recognition of Israel was a big deal. It still leads to religious and militaristic struggles in the Middle East today. Israel became a safe haven for the Jewish population after the horrors of World War II. They were kicked out of their countries after some of them had just been released from concentration camps. The recognition of Israel by the United States fits perfectly with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, continuing Eleanor's legacy of peace, justice, liberty, and compassion. Through Eleanor's work in the United Nations, she changed the world, helping draft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, protecting the rights of everyone, and helping America recognize Israel, ensuring its protection. One woman, in a span of 2 years, changed the world, affecting it in ways that are still apparent today, leaving a legacy of peace, love, compassion, justice, and acceptance behind her for generations to come. Eleanor Roosevelt was amazing, changing the world throughout her long life of serving the people. In her 2 years in the United Nations, she changed the world, uniting 2 blocks of the world that had been turned enemies by war, leading a commission, overseeing the creation of one of the most important human rights documents to date, and helping with the United States' recognition of Israel. With a legacy seemingly buried in history, Eleanor Roosevelt was so much more than a president's wife. Eleanor was a soldier for world peace and acceptance, leaving behind hope wherever she went.
You mean I had 1 minute to leave one word with, say, 25 million people. What would that word be?
That one word would be hope.
Just hope?
Yes, it's the most neglected word in our language.
One thing I believe profoundly: we make our own history. Eleanor Roosevelt.